You hit your KPIs, meet your SLAs, but does that really make you irreplaceable as the incumbent? In this episode, Brian and Ed break down how smart incumbents stay ahead of shifting missions, evolving customer needs, and the competition. Let's dive in.
The other part of that incumbent self-assessment is what makes you actually irreplaceable, or at least really valuable, right? I think
Right.
the point, so there's right, the point of I've hit my KPIs and meeting my SLAs, well, that's great, but I think that means you're a C student, that I'm getting my assignments in on time. Well, yeah, you are, and that's super duper. We appreciate that, but it's not the same as understanding and getting it, right? That's the key thing here as the incumbent is that you do have the advantage to truly get it. I think this is where the incumbent can also take advantage of it. So then maybe we add that as a metric we hold ourselves to. Did we get it resolved in the first time? You think as the incumbent you can demonstrate you are at least highly valuable, if not irreplaceable. And to do irreplaceable, that's a really tricky thing to demonstrate that, but at least to put a big enough moat around you that if the challengers sniff around and go, oh boy, these guys are the pros from Dover. I don't know if I want to ride this train. This might be a little bit too much for me to go on. That's also a good way to do incumbent defense to show that you're kicking butt, you're taking names, and no one may not want to even mess with you because they can go off and pick on someone who's a little bit more vulnerable. We touch on this that bears consideration is those relationships that your team has with the customers, whether they be on the source selection or people that are just influencers internally. And that's tricky because even now the relationship may not be so stable. Like we talked about earlier, the people have left and you have to reset. Um, that's a moat that you can't count on quite so much anymore. You don't have those champions may be gone. They may have decided to hell with this, I'm retiring, or they get riffed, or whatever it is. So it's that domain expertise I think you were touching on, though, and the demonstrated performance that you have to perhaps rest a little bit more on to make yourself irreplaceable. That you understand the inner workings of that particular mission more than you have. And I think that we touched on this already is the future proofing aspect. Because what the contract is at contract award 4 years ago could be radically different now. Are you evolving with it? Are you keeping up with the Joneses? Are you keeping up with what's happening next? And that self-examination is really important. I mean, how might you see someone as able to future-proof themselves? What have you done to future-proof your contracts to make sure that as the cheese moves, that you're staying in front of it?
When we talk about value, really we're talking about the ability to drive outcomes. So that's again beyond the KPIs. We're talking about understanding, hey, at the end, we're making a sausage, going back to that example. So there's all different steps in that, but what is the outcome you're trying to drive? When we talk about people, again, it's not just about, hey, here are the key personnel. It's what are the people you need in place to ensure you're managing relationships, whether they're changing or not, to ensure you're managing the monitors and controls and performance. When we talk about process to drive outcomes, you're not just saying we do this, it's truly to future-proof it. What are the frameworks, the methodologies, and approaches that you are actually putting in place that drive that outcome? That you have these monitors and controls in place, that's why the process exists. Whether they're checkpoints, verification loopholes, or whether they are, true proofs, testing, UAT, regression testing, all of those things that come into development as well to ensure you are driving towards those right outcomes in sprints, in all of those methodologies. And then finally, when we talk about portfolio, again, it's are we doing things? Are we taking in work that shows, again, we are able to drive outcomes beyond just performance metrics? A C student is a company that is meeting performance metrics. You're doing everything we asked you to do. You're doing them throughout the term of the contract. Great. Well, C students are commodity based in the end. And we know in this environment, the government always wants cheaper, faster, more innovative right now. Those are all things they're looking for. And guess what? There's someone, not the incumbent, telling them that they could do things cheaper, faster, and more innovation in their process. And not only is someone telling them that, but in this 2025 environment you talk about, there's actually now people above saying, oh, by the way, government, by the way, cores and agencies and CO leads, you've got to start looking for things cheaper and faster and more innovation. So start listening to those people. Well, when you are now the incumbent, when you're talking about future proofing, you better be drawing your people, process, and portfolios to the outcomes, not the performance metrics anymore, because you want to go back and get to be able to say, well, great, they're offering you that, but you realize that doesn't fit in your environment. Great, they're telling you they could give you cheaper, but you realize that if you're going to go cheaper, you're going to lose all the expertise or the whatever risk that might create for the program, because there is a value to what you do. So, when I formed Polaris, it's about that. It's about understanding the value of your people, process, and portfolio so that you could point to your North Star. Because ultimately, if you're aligned to your value, to what the customer is looking for, you're future-proofed. If you get to say, we're doing this and we're creating these changes and we're learning as we go. Again, it's understanding when you win the contract, we're winning it to drive these outcomes. Yes, these are the SLAs and the KPIs in them, but here are the outcomes that we're going to want to drive. Here are the processes we're going to start using, and we'll talk about a lot of this in the next section. But here are the processes and methodologies we're going to use to monitor those outcomes. And that's what ultimately is going to future-proof us. Because as long as we're doing those things, we're going to be current in what the outcomes the customer most desires, regardless of what people are there, because we're monitoring that. We're bringing it back in and we're acting on that information in real time to ensure we are not looking the same in year 5 as we did in year 1. We've evolved our program, our people, process, and portfolios to say, hey, we are set up to be the only company that could actually continue to advance those outcomes over the next 5 years in a way that you could trust and believe and not just sort of be sold bells and whistles.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. I think the big takeaway, at least for me, is the key theme is to focus on making yourself irreplaceable and valuable, is that you actually understand the agency's outcomes they desire and what those are, because those outcomes, that may not be overly evident from reading an RFP. It may not be overly evident from, let's say, a loose capture. But as the incumbent, having worked with these people that tell you what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, that may be a bit more nuanced and a bit more difficult to define in terms of what those outcomes are, but that's the unique you have to take advantage of, which will help you future proof. Because if something changes with what their expectations are, likely the outcomes desired, they may change the outcome, they may add some outcomes or design, whatever that may be. You have that unique knowledge that I'm willing to bet you that most challengers will not understand. And then when their proposal arrives, they are dead on arrival. They're dead. They don't even know it yet. But the few that get it will be the ones who will run the crucible and probably at least survive, if not get to the final stage with hopefully a win. And if you're the incumbent, you want to make sure you use that knowledge of my desired outcome or the customer's desired outcomes. That's the clincher right there. So I think it's a very good North Star to guide yourself towards. This is the outcome. Everything else is simply the path to get there.